go.
From ancient civilizations to the lost city of Z, we've got you covered at Brothers of the Serpent Podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents. This is Brothers of the Serpent Podcast, and we are coming to you not live and totally remote. Most of us from the 10x10 aren't. Most of us are not in the 10x10x10 Tangent Cube of Science. Just me, in here all by myself.
But I am still here, ladies and gentlemen.
Shut up, Kyle. Man. Anyway, we're glad to be back. Kyle is at the beach. I am, like I said, in the cube by myself. This is great. I have like both desks, the keyboard and the mouse.
He finally has control, folks.
Total control. Except Kyle's doing all the recording and I don't really have any control. But yeah. And we're also joined by the Watcher, who is in some kind of space war.
He's
Watcher, are you there?
piloting a space station somewhere.
Yeah, I'm flying the shuttle back to base camp.
Roger Wilco, oh boy.
Yeah, he is also remote and traveling at the moment, so he's not going to be able to do much watching, but he's still with us, and we just wanted you guys to know that he is there, listening from space in the middle of explosions.
We're all in trouble.
Blast him out of the
buddy.
sky, Watcher.
Yeah. Shoot him down. Yeah, I'm glad you're out there, man. And so since Kyle's remote, we're going to do a listener communications episode. Kyle, did you want to read some of these emails, or are we just going to go with? What do you think?
I mean, I will, but how do I get them?
You would have to open them up in your browser, I guess.
Let's see.
We can talk about that next segment. I can read the first
All right.
ones.
We'll figure that out.
Yeah.
I'll have to log in.
Yeah, so this is interesting. I don't think we've ever done it this way before.
No, this will be the first time.
Yeah, first time.
I am in a bunker.
Yeah, Kyle's also in a bunker.
Yeah, the farthest reaches of the condo down at the beach in the closet with all this storage equipment. A bunch of Halloween decorations and stuff. But
You guys been fishing?
It's pretty damp. Yeah, but there's a big storm in the Gulf right now.
Oh.
So it's weird because there's almost like the wind is really, everything's calm, but the seas are raging.
Wow.
I mean, dude, there's been some massive waves out there, and it's like I can't even get to the sandbar. A lot of the time the waves are huge and they're just pounding you one after the other, and the water's murky and everything. But funny thing happened that today a game warden or Texas Parks Wildlife person, game warden, whatever, came by, and I was off swimming in the ocean with Soul, riding waves. And he pulls right up to the camp, and he tells Dad, like, "Hey, let me see your fishing license." And Dad's like,
Yeah, little stash.
he shows him his fishing license, and the guy goes, "All right, well, I'm going to give you this huge redfish."
Oh.
So he gives us this massive 33-inch redfish.
Hey.
Yes, dude, beautiful red. So he was down at the jetties, and all these guys were down there catching all these reds, and he started asking them for licenses, and they didn't have a whole bunch of the people down there didn't have licenses, and so he confiscated all their fish, and he had a truck full of all these reds, and he was zooming down the beach and asking every person on the beach if they had a license. And if they had a fishing license, he was giving away the fish to the people with fishing licenses.
Wow.
I thought that was really cool. I was like, wow,
that is
dude.
cool. Yeah.
So guess what we're doing tomorrow?
Fishing off the jetty?
That's right. Because we haven't been catching shit. It's been so the seas have been so rough. But yeah, so we're getting up early in the morning. We're going down to the jetties. I went and caught a bunch of bait out in the bay with the cast net, loaded up on like 100 little mullet. So we're going in the morning.
Nice.
So yeah, got a nice sunburn going on.
All right.
Drinking some beer.
Gotta have one of those at least once a year.
Drinking breakfast beers every day. It's been great.
Breakfast beers.
Freaking breakfast beers, man. There's nothing like it.
Yeah.
Bacon and eggs and a beer, folks.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm glad you guys are having a good time down there. That's great. Yeah. I'm also having the time of my life.
Yeah, I bet you are.
Yeah. Total solitude, folks. Yep. Kyle and his family are gone. Stash and Stank Mom are gone. No one to bother me for a whole week. It's amazing.
Yep.
Well, I do have there's not much of an ag update. So that you gave that was kind of an ag update, sort of, fishing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've been keeping track of the wine. I am going to be doing more testing tomorrow and additions as need be.
So how's it been going? Has it been eating up the SO2 or what?
Well, okay, yeah. So the big tank, yes. I mean, dude,
it's eating it up.
It's eating it up.
It must have oxygen.
Yeah, I gassed it, but it is what it is.
So the headspace in there's like 6 or 8 inches at the top of the tank. That's just air. We don't have enough wine to fill it. So
right.
Yeah, they say you're supposed to gas it every day in some cases, but it's a young wine, so it's not a big deal. But yeah,
okay. Well, I could gas it every day. I haven't done that. But anyway, I was just saying I'm going to check them again tomorrow, and the big tank I expect will have eaten up what I put in there last time. But I think the Monty is stabilizing. So
yeah, and it's all in barrels topped up. So
right, yeah,
nice,
yeah,
It's got to be that tank, dude.
Yeah, I'm sure it's the tank and the headspace.
But the barrels came in. They're over at Slate Mill, so we'll be picking them up. You could grab a trailer or the truck and trailer maybe and go pick them up. Either way, I'll pick them up on Monday.
Okay. Yeah, and then the other thing I guess is I did harvest a little bit of honey from the bees. And
golden nectar of the gods.
That's right. Yeah, so it was interesting. I picked the hive that I thought could.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Yes, I picked the hive that I thought could handle it. I am gonna obviously make sure that they stay fed over the winter if necessary. But all I took was one frame from one hive. And we have 38 total supers, and I just took 38 total super frames, and I just took one. And I got almost. I got almost a quart from that one frame.
Man, so that would be like 38 quarts of honey, dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, obviously, they haven't filled up every frame, so we don't have 38 frames full of honey. Like I just took one that had quite a bit on it. But when they do, because they will fill them all up, we're gonna have a lot of honey from those 4 hives. Yeah. And it's it's a fun process. Like the process I'm using right now is very manual. There's lots of special gear for for harvesting, and like they have these centrifuges where you just put the frame down in there and then it spins it and slings all the honey to the outside and then it drips down into a container. But I'm just doing it manually, old school, like scrape it off there into a big container and then slowly put the scraped honey plus comb into a strainer and let it drip through, which is the first straining. And then after you've done that, then you I did that into a jar, and then I took the jar and set it in warm water for a couple of hours and let the honey get you can't heat it up too much because it starts to break down and destroy the enzymes and other stuff in there that's good for you. So like 95 degrees tops, and I didn't even get it that hot. I might have gotten it up to 85 or something like that, the honey itself. But anyway, that makes the honey sort of thin out, drops the viscosity, and then the wax, whatever is left of the little bits of wax and the bubbles and other stuff, will rise to the top. And then you let the honey cool back down, and then you can skim that layer off the top, and then so that's what I did. So it's pretty clear, looks great, tastes good. So, yeah. So, and
Watcher
then I also
says that it would be 9.5 gallons of honey. How did you do that while you were flying a spaceship?
In the middle of a space battle. Inside a bag of chips.
Wait a minute, guys. Hold up. What's happening here? Is the old format still alive when we're doing communications episodes?
I don't know. I have no idea. I thought of the same thing. Since we're doing communications, do we go ahead and do all the space weather news and everything at the beginning?
Yeah, let's do that. Because then it's like those people who are still married to the old format, they can't sign those divvy papers. They can look forward to the communications. They get their fix once a month. Hit me up with more communications episodes, guys.
I do have to say that the ratio, the level of complaints to compliments to the new format have changed. Now there's like more people saying I like it this way than people who are complaining.
Oh man, they were so married, dude.
Yeah. That's right.
Slowly but surely, they're getting the old divvy.
They're gonna have to. They don't have a choice. All right, let me switch over to. Let's see. We got.
Are we doing space
ag update? Yeah. God dang.
We
both have a soundboard. All right. Well, let me go ahead and do space weather news. From spaceweather.com, we have a possible close encounter with a CME, ladies and gentlemen. NOAA forecasters say that a slow-moving CME might pass close to Earth today, which is October 12th. This CME left the sun 5 days ago. The near miss could shove solar wind plasma onto Earth's magnetic field, sparking auroras around the Arctic Circle. Also, yesterday, 2 jets of dark plasma shot out of sunspot AR3116. NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory recorded these M-class eruptions. These jets are dark because they are relatively cool. Emphasis on relatively. The temperature was only a little less than 50,000 degrees Kelvin. This is the sun, after all. Often such eruptions produce coronal mass ejections, CMEs, but not this time. SOHO coronagraphs show no CMEs emerging from this blast site. And finally, the deep impact of DART. For the first time ever, human tech has altered the orbit of a planetary body. In a media briefing yesterday, NASA reported that DART's plunge into Dimorphos changed the orbital period of this asteroid moon by a whopping 32 minutes. NASA would have declared the mission a success with only a 73-second change. So this is a huge accomplishment. They just wanted one more second than 72. But they got a 32-minute change.
That's
One of the
awesome.
revelations at the briefing was a new image from the Hubble Space Telescope, which shows a long comet-like tail of debris behind the battered asteroid. The tail is made of fine dust, blasted into space by DART's impact. The dust is so fine that individual dust grains can be pushed away from the asteroid by the gossamer pressure of sunlight. And this is how comet tails are formed as well. That Hubble image reveals for the first time that the tail of Dimorphos is splitting in two, and researchers don't yet know why. In another surprise, NASA announced that recoil of ejecta from the asteroid's surface contributed significantly to the asteroid's orbital change. Previously, mission planners expected that the mass of DART alone would play a role. Dimorphos is only 170 meters across, but its tail stretches 10,000 kilometers into space. These dimensions mean the tail can be seen by large amateur telescopes on Earth. So backyard astronomers can potentially monitor changes such as the continued splitting of the tail and interactions with the solar wind. Right now, Dimorphos is located south of the celestial equator, but it is moving north and will be within range of Northern Hemisphere telescopes later this month. So I think that's really cool. They got way more of a response, an orbital response, than they thought they were going to get. Very interesting. I wonder if this is going to change the way they might calculate. Because think about it, this is the concept of how comets can really shift their orbits. Like all it takes is an explosion on the comet's surface because it gets closer to the sun, it heats up, and that ejecta coming off the comet actually has way more of an impact on its orbit than they initially thought. Yeah.
So I
32
wonder if-
minutes
do you-
but instead of 72 seconds.
Do you
know?
think that it's because they've maybe miscalculated the mass?
Oh, that's a good point. That could be. I don't know. I'd have to dig into it to find out.
But yeah, that's really cool.
So, current conditions, solar wind speed, 327.7 kilometers per second. The density is a very low, 0.86 protons per cubic centimeter. Sunspot number is 72. And the neutron count today is 5.3% above the space age average. KP index is 2, which is quiet, and the 24-hour max is also 2, quiet. That is your space weather news for the week.
Cool. All right, well, I got a story here that was actually, I think this was posted in the Discord. I think that's where I got this. It's from the Atlantic. Haven't read it. This is a cold read, folks. I'm trusting
All
the
right.
Discord people, and I don't know
That's
who to
the best
blame for
kind.
this. The headline is Scientists Can No Longer Ignore Ancient Flooding Tales. Indigenous stories from the end of the last ice age could be more than myth. It wasn't long after Henry David Inglis arrived on the island of Jersey, just northwest of France, that he heard the old story. Locals eagerly told the 19th century Scottish traveler writer how, in a bygone age, their island had been much more substantial, and that folks used to walk to the French coast. The only hurdle to their journey was a river, one easily crossed using a short bridge. Pah! Inglis presumably scoffed as he looked out across 22 kilometers of shimmering blue sea between Jersey and the French coast, because he went on to write in his 1834 book about the region that this was an assertion too ridiculous to merit examination. About 100.
Okay, I did read this story. It's good.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
okay.
Okay,
It was
yeah.
posted in the Discord. I don't know who
Yeah.
to credit for it, but about 150 years earlier, another writer, Jean Pion de Sier, had been similarly unmoved by the tale. No one could have trod from Jersey to Normandy, he withered, unless it were before the flood, referring to the
yes.
Old Testament cataclysm. Yet there had been a flood, a big one. Between roughly 15,000 and 6,000 years ago, massive flooding caused by melting glaciers raised sea levels around Europe. That flooding is what eventually turned Jersey into an island. Rather than being a ridiculous claim not worthy of examination, perhaps the old story was true. A whisper from ancestors who really did walk through now vanished lands. A whisper that has echoed across millennia. That's exactly what the geographer Patrick Nunn and the historian Margaret Cook at the University of the Sunshine Coast in Australia have proposed in a recent paper. In their work, the pair describe colorful legends from northern Europe and Australia that depict rising waters, peninsulas becoming islands, and receding coastlines during that period of deglaciation thousands of years ago. Some of these stories, the researchers say, capture historical sea level rise that actually happened, often several thousand years ago. For scholars of oral history, that makes them geomyths.
Yeah, that's a great term.
Yeah, geomyths is a good one. The first time I read an Aboriginal story from Australia that seemed to recall the rise of sea levels after the last ice age, I thought, no, I don't think this is correct, Nunn says. But then I read another story that recalled the same thing. Nunn has since gathered 32 groups of stories from indigenous communities across the coast of Australia that seem to refer to geological changes along shorelines. Take the legends of Garngur, told by the Lardil people, also known as Kunhanamenda. I guess it's a whole bunch of A's in there. Kunhanamenda. Anyway, in the Wellesley Islands off northern Australia. It describes a seagull woman, Garngur, who cut the islands off from the mainland by dragging a giant raft, or a walpa, back and forth across a peninsula. In some versions of the story, this is punishment for her brother Crane, who failed to look after her child when asked. Nunn and Cook argue that the narrative can be taken as a memory of how roughly 10,000 years ago, melting glaciers caused the Wellesley Islands to be cut off from the mainland. Interestingly, there is an underwater ridge between two of the Wellesley Islands, perhaps a feature of the seabed that prompted the image of Grangur plowing her raft into the earth, the researchers suggest in their paper. That's really cool, dude.
Yeah.
I was just thinking of like actual icebergs moving across the peninsula, and then they eventually melt, and it's an island. That's really cool. Separately, other indigenous groups in South Australia, such as the Ngarrindjeri and the Remenjeri, tell of a period when Kangaroo Island was once connected to the mainland. Some say it got cut off by a big storm, while others describe a line of partially submerged boulders that once allowed people to cross to the island. For Joe Brindren, a paleoclimatologist at the University of Bergen in Norway, who has studied the effects of deglaciation in Europe following the end of the last ice age, the idea that traditional oral histories preserve real accounts of sea level rise is perfectly plausible. Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. During the last ice age, he says, the sudden melting of ice sheets induced catastrophic events known as meltwater pulses, which caused sudden and extreme sea level rise. Along some coastlines in Europe, the ocean may have risen as much as 10 meters in just 200 years. At such a pace, it would have been noticeable to people across just a few human generations. Wow, that's interesting. 10 meters in 200 years would have been noticeable to people across just a few human generations.
Yeah. Well, I guess one generation is generally 20 to 25 years long, right?
Yeah. So it might have been noticeable to people within 50 years that the sea level was rising 10 meters in 200 years.
I think what he's trying to say is that if it rose 10 meters in 20 years, then like after one generation, it's risen, like half a meter, which would be a noticeable thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. The pulses
as opposed to a couple of inches in 100 years or something.
Right. Yeah. But I don't know. It's like so you say 10 meters in 200 years, but is that really what happened?
I don't know. I'm just saying.
Did it rise 8 meters in 2 years and the rest in the other, 198 years?
For sure. Yeah. But I mean, even if it was gradual across the 200 years, you'd think that you would notice, half a meter.
Yeah. Because in some places
that would be a big freaking deal.
Yeah. In some places that would cross a lot of surface. Yeah.
Sunderland.
Yeah.
Okay, so continuing on with the story, let's see. Brindren explains, these stories are anecdotes, but enough anecdotes make for data. By systematically collecting these kinds of memories or stories, I think you can learn something. Beyond capturing historical events, geomyths offer a glimpse into the inner lives of those who were there, says Tim Burberry, an expert on geomyths at Marshall University in West Virginia, who was not involved in the research.
Of course.
These are stories based in trauma, based in catastrophe, he says. That, he suggests, is why it may have made sense for successive generations to pass on tales of geological upheaval. Ancient societies may have sought to broadcast their warning, beware, these things can happen. They would mythologize it, Burberry adds. They would use the language of legend, and within that, there could be some real data.
Yes.
Today, many people report a sense of eco-anxiety because of climate change and its effects, including sea level rise. A couple of inches over 100 years. Nunn points out that our contemporary situation differs in some ways from ancient predicaments. There are many more humans on the planet and huge, densely populated coastal cities, for example. And unlike historical periods of deglaciation, We are today both the agents and victims of rapid environmental change. But vulnerability to climate shifts allows us to feel an affinity toward our forebears. And the old stories still have things to teach us. As Nunn says, the fact that our ancestors have survived those periods gives us hope that we can survive this. Yes.
Yes.
I agree. Chris Baranuik is a freelance science and technology journalist, blah, blah, blah. This is the end of the story. Anyway, that's the writer of the story. I thought it was this story was written by Chris Baranuik or Nayak. Baranayak, whatever. Anyway, yeah. Yeah. That's cool. It's good to hear that these academics are like, hey, ancient oral traditions can be telling us the truth about real occurrences.
Yeah.
On the planet.
There's been some of that with the Australian traditions already. I know going back maybe as much as 10 years, maybe more, where they've been finding evidence that these people have stories that are like a geomyth that tell about massive changes to the landscape, some of which might be 20, 30, or 40,000 years old.
It just seems like counter to, the modern anthropogenic climate change narrative to say that like ancient myths of severe climate change would be valid. Because then, it's like, well, you're talking about 10 meters in 200 years, which is way more than we're talking about in the current scientific models.
Yeah.
And yet there was nothing that they were doing that was causing it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the argument is, it's interesting that they're acknowledging that. To me,
Yes.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
And a good thing.
I think that part of the current, idea of climate change is that our human activity, anthropogenic activity, has completely overwhelmed natural processes. So
Right.
it doesn't matter what natural processes acted in the past.
Yeah,
we
that's a
are
good
the
point.
only process, or at least we're the strongest one acting now. So,
Yeah, you're right.
but still, it is interesting, and I do like that they decided to end on a note there where they're like, well, they had a
Ancient
really
peoples.
bad climate shift and they survived because
Yeah.
we're here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We can be optimistic, folks.
Yeah.
We're going to survive it.
Yeah. No matter what the cause, first of all, climate is going to change. And no matter what the cause is, it can change rapidly and drastically, and we can survive it, usually.
As
Yeah.
long as the Watcher's out there fighting his space wars, we'll be okay.
That's right.
Are you still there, Watcher? You still
I mean, he's
Fighting
probably...
fighting your space wars? Ah, good. Evil laugh included. That's great.
Well, we got a bunch of emails. I think there's like 18 of them. You think we can get through all of them?
That
only
depends. That depends on how badly I need to trash their theories.
Well, yeah, and some of them are booky, but these are good ones. But yeah, we got less than 2 minutes left in this segment.
Yeah,
so why don't
let's
we
take a
end it
break.
here and we'll come back.
Sounds good. We'll be right back, folks.
Yep, right back.
Snakes. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. 30% brain expansion guaranteed on Brothers of the Serpent podcast. And of course, the reason for that 30% brain expansion is because we are Almost always wrong, 98.6% of the time. And that's not a joke.
No, it's not.
No, I mean the connection between accepting that you are wrong almost all the time and the 30% brain expansion, that is the reason.
That that is very true. That is very true. So we have a bunch of emails, like I said, to go through. First, I wanted to give a couple shout outs. Shout out to Sophie. What's up, girl? See you in Egypt. Bring that arrowhead and your best jokes. I'll be expecting your best jokes.
Ooh, you better bring some good jokes.
Yeah, we'll be on the lookout for your best jokes. Also, shout out to Troy and Andrew. Dudes, had a lot of fun hanging out with you guys in Washington.
What's going on, boys?
Yeah, we'll see you guys sometime this winter. You need to find some good shrubs so we can do some shrub jumping.
Shrub jumping is one of my favorite pastimes.
Yeah, Troy got in some good shrub jumping.
All right. It can be dangerous. Make sure
Yeah.
you know what's on the other side of the shrub. Always good. One time we went shrub jumping, me and a buddy of mine, and there was a 13-foot cliff on the other side, and we did not know. Some of the best shrubs, you can't see through them,
Yeah.
but they look so jumpable. We both jumped into this shrub, and I just remember free falling in the dark. And I amazingly landed on my feet, and my buddy landed on his back.
That's
It just knocked him out clean.
Well, you might remember, Kyle, there were some pretty good shrubs at that.
Oh, there were some fantastic shrubs.
Yeah. So I showed Troy the art of shrub jumping.
Are you serious? Because
And then
I suggested shrub jumping to someone else, completely independent of that.
Oh yeah, no. And I was out there hanging out with him at night when, I don't know, somebody was giving a presentation or whatever. So I was out helping, Heather with the kids. And then I was like, Troy, check this out, bro. Shrub jumping. And he was all over it. He was running around in that square, jumping on every shrub. So he was like, this is awesome.
It's the
I'm like,
bane
"Yes."
of every gardener's existence.
That's right.
I don't like it.
I was like, try not to jump in the same place on the shrubs because it leaves a mark.
What are these giant voids in my beautifully trimmed shrubs? couple of Johnsons were out there shrub jumping.
It's my fault.
It's kind of like crop circles a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's dive into some emails. This is from Seth. It's called ex-Quarry worker. So we're getting some boots on the ground reports here. So he says, I go by Call Me Ian in the Cruising with Steak chat. So he's in the Cruising with Steak Discord. Says, I worked in a dimensional, meaning not a gravel pit, limestone quarry for almost a decade, and it does keep you ripped. Hey.
Pulleys and butt flaps and stuff?
Yeah, hammers and chisels.
Okay.
So MSHA, M-S-H-A, like OSHA, but even worse, governs that business. Rubber-dipped canvas gloves last the longest, right? So this is kind of a response to Laura's.
Dude, pro tip for Lala. Rubber-dipped canvas gloves. We got some of those.
Yeah, and so this is also a response to the email that she was responding to, or the guy was like, what were the conditions of those guys' hands that worked on the pyramid, right?
Sheepskin gloves.
Right. So Seth says, I only lost 3 fingernails and developed tendinitis in both forearms from gripping a chisel and a 4-pound hammer for 10 hours a day. Also sustained numerous abrasions and lacerations. That is all. Snakes!
Wow.
So boots on the ground. Yeah. So working in a quarry is
Still hard.
rough. Yeah, it's rough. Thanks, Seth. Really appreciate that. Report there. Okay. This one's from Troy, and it is definitely a tome. It's called Hello, Brothers. It says, Russ, Kyle, and Brett, just so you know, I am not worried about doxing, so feel free to read my real name and anything in this email on the show. Okay, so this is Troy Hoover. Says, hello, my name is Troy Hoover. I am 40 years old, and I live in upstate New York, specifically Saratoga Springs, which is about a half hour north of Albany and 15 minutes south of the Adirondacks. My Discord name is Solid Luigi.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to try to keep this from becoming a book. No promises, though. Yes, promise. A good thing you didn't promise because it was not kept. I found you guys through the usual path, Rogan episodes with Carlson and Hancock to Cosmographia to your podcast. After hearing some of the others on Cosmo comment about your show and liking your personalities from Cosmo, it was a no-brainer. It was February 2022 when I decided to start. So when I pulled up Brothers of the Serpent on my podcast app and saw that there were about 230 episodes averaging 2 to 3 hours each, I almost fell out of my chair. I thought to myself, I'll never listen to all of these. That would be ridiculous. So I decided to pick and choose ones that sounded interesting to me, similar to what I do with Rogan. I listened to the Sign and the Seal episodes first and absolutely loved them.
Great choice.
Yeah. And then I listened to the Epic of Gilgamesh episode and loved it also. So after listening to those 3 episodes and enjoying them so much, I completely 180'd on my initial I'll never listen to all these thought, and then said to myself, I must listen to all of these in order. I have now accomplished this task.
Oh my God.
I am fully caught up. It took me from February 2022 to August 2022 with only a break for 4 audiobooks, all of which were Hancock books. What a ride. So let me say,
Hell yeah.
Russ and Kyle, you two are the most relatable and enjoyable podcast hosts I've ever listened to. After listening to so many episodes and thinking back on it, you and your personalities are really what grabbed me in those initial 3 episodes, not just the material itself. You guys really have a natural gift. Wow. Thank you, man.
Thanks, buddy. Well, you should have just said Kyle has a natural gift.
That's right. That's right. Since I've been into a lot of this subject matter for many years, I've watched and listened to tons of different shows and podcasts and YouTube episodes from various people, and none have come even close to feeling as welcoming as yours. The way you guys include many friends and family in the show, it's just great and makes me feel at home right away. During my 6-month catch-up to current episodes, I also forbade myself from joining the Discord until I finished.
Wow.
There were many times I almost cracked and joined before I fully caught up, but I always hated the idea of not having all the information and jumping into a chat with other listeners. So I've been in the Discord for about a week or 2 now, and it's the same welcoming feeling all over again. Similar to many other listeners that have written in to you, I don't really have any friends or family in my real life that I can deep dive into this stuff with. I have a great group of friends, and I am happily married, but nobody else really goes past the surface on this stuff. So the Discord that you've put together is a dream come true, so thank you for that. Procession has been playing nonstop on all my devices recently. Such a great album.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
This is crazy, man. Thank you so much. Holy crap.
Yeah. This is really, really awesome. Thank you. And there's
Warm and
still
fuzzies, oh boy.
there's still more because it is a book. We're like,
Well, let's hear chapter 10. I'm looking forward to it.
Chapter 16. I think I relate so much with you two for a handful of reasons. I believe I'm about the same age as Kyle. I was born in 1982. Being about the same age as both of you, I've noticed my sense of humor and many other aspects of my personality are similar to yours, in the same way that many people of a certain generation all have similar aspects to each other. Another big reason I relate to you guys so much is that I have 2 brothers. I'm the middle one, so I definitely relate to all of the brotherly energy. Aha! So he's been the younger and the older brother.
Best of both worlds, huh?
Let's just say I really appreciate the ball busting between you guys and the Watcher and the friends and family you have on the show. It's the same way with my family and group of friends. I don't understand any other way to bond with other males. Ha! So when I see or hear a good busting session, it brings a smile to my face.
You mean you appreciate Kyle's ball busting? 'Cause obviously, I ball bust the best.
Well, I always hold back because I don't want to make you feel bad. You know, as the older brother, it's my responsibility to not hurt Kyle too bad.
It's the best excuse. I'll let you pass.
Makes my life easy, folks. He says, I also really relate to your do-it-yourself attitude, the manual labor, blue-collar, dirty job work ethic, and artistic skills. I work at a label manufacturing company where I do all of the digital painting or printing and graphic design. But it's a small business, so I also help with a lot of the machine maintenance and die cutting and packing and shipping and forklifting and plate burning, etc. Before I landed that gig, I had jobs in landscaping and land surveying, construction, and swimming pool service. I love working with my hands and putting in a good hard day's work. My father always tries to figure out how to do something himself before hiring someone else to do it. And when I was growing up, he always had 3 or 4 different projects going on at any given time. So I've become the same way, and I can fix and improve almost anything in or on my house. And I always have something to do. I get that vibe from you guys, and after listening to the episode with your father, one of my favorites, I can easily see you getting that mindset from the Snake Stash, same as
Absolutely.
I got it from my father. My first night in the Discord, I had mentioned to another listener that there were many times where I'd have an episode playing in my earbuds as I was felling a tree in my backyard or splitting some wood or fixing a raised garden bed for my wife, etc. And I would stop for a minute to take a break and have this really cool and meaningful connection, since I know you guys also do a lot of similar type work and have a great work ethic. The best times are when I don't finish a project until after the sun sets and I'm cleaning up outside, staring up at the stars while you guys are talking about ancient civilizations, studying the stars. Really cool feeling. As a side hustle, I do freelance illustration and design. I've been drawing as long as I can remember, so my artistic side has always been a big part of my life. I've attended 2 colleges for artistic majors, one right out of high school for graphic design and another about 8 years later for comic book illustration. Man, really cool.
Hey, Russ has done some comic book illustration.
Yeah, I have done a lot of drawing and comic book illustration back in the day. So he says, especially at the second college, after I got to know most of my classmates, I got a strong feeling that I was amongst the 1 to 3% of students that had ever picked up a hammer or worked at any sort of manual labor job. It may just be my experience, but I feel like most people that have a strong artistic side to them don't also get into blue-collar/dirty job do-it-yourself stuff as well. Those 2 areas seem to be on opposite sides of a spectrum, which never made a lot of sense to me, as I see many of those jobs and do-it-yourself as creative. Whenever I come across people that have a foot in both ends of that spectrum, I really connect with them because I don't come across it very often. I never really fit in with the artsy-fartsy crowd since I always played sports and enjoyed manual labor, and I never really fit in entirely with the other end of the spectrum because the only thing those guys want to talk about is the NFL draft. If I ever tried to bring up any of the topics that are discussed on the show, there would be no interest. So, for a TLDR, being a guy about the same age, with 2 brothers of my own, with a similar mindset, attitude, and sense of humor, interests in both artistic and blue-collar dirty jobs, I really relate to the whole vibe of the show and the way you guys interact with each other, to the point that after so many hours of listening to you, I feel like I have a 4th and 5th brother now. Please don't think I'm weird. I'm not. I'm really trying to make this sound not weird.
That's cool, bro. It's a little weird.
It's just a little weird.
Just kidding, dude. No, it's cool.
I mean, listen, if you get to the point where you say, please don't think I'm sounding weird, it's too late. It's already weird. All right, chapter 30. I have many topics and ideas I'm going to be sending you or discussing on the Discord, but I wanted to keep this as mostly an intro email for now. So it wouldn't be, okay, so this is just the prologue. I wanted to keep this as mostly an intro email for now so that it wouldn't become overwhelmingly huge. Fail! It's all right, though. This is great. However, I will share one quick idea and proposition that popped into my head recently. You guys came up with the certificate of ignorance pretty early on in the show. I propose that anyone who has listened to more than 120 episodes now has a doctorate of ignorance. Hear me out. Here are the average amounts of credit hours required for each degree. Bachelor's is 120, master's 30 to 60, doctorate 45 to 120. So using the maximum amount for each level, the total credit hours to get a doctorate is 300. A rough average length for an episode for your podcast is 2.5 hours. Therefore, 120 episodes is 300 hours of listening. There are 256 episodes as of tonight, so anyone fully caught up has approximately 640 hours of listening and has completed 2 doctorates of ignorance. So, Dr. Allen, and Dr. England, keep up the great work. This is Dr. Hoover signing off. Thanks.
That's great. Genius. Thank you, Dr. Hoover. Doctor.
Right. Fantastic email.
That's really cool,
so,
dude. The thing that gets me is that you have, like, when you're saying you have no friends or family that you can talk to about these things, that just blows me away, bro.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we started out that way too,
Yep.
and now they all know. Right?
That's
It's like we're just relentless. They're talking about the neighbor's lawn and stuff, and we're like, hey, does the neighbor's lawn have a fucking pyramid in it? Okay, I don't care. But check out this cool pyramid.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Eventually they come around.
Yeah.
Or
how many of those lawns it would take to fill up the bottom of the Great Pyramid?
It's like our
I
boss,
bet
dude.
you don't. Yeah.
We plant this giant orchard out there, and when we're done, we're standing there, and Russ goes, dude, I just figured out that this is a quarter of the base of the Great Pyramid. And we're like,
Yes.
and so the boss rolls up, and he's like all happy about this giant orchard we just finished planting, and Russ tells him like, boss, look out there. Behold, your entire orchard is only a quarter of the base of the Great Pyramid. That's how you get. Just imagine that.
Yeah.
Of course, with our boss, he just walks away. But that's part of his personality. It's great.
That is part of his personality.
It's great.
He just looks at you and turns around and walks off without saying a word.
But you never stop. You just got to point out those snake facts every now and again. And eventually somebody bites. It's like fishing. But I tell you this, a really great thing to do, a really great introductory Snake Bros deep dive is the Revelation of the Pyramids,
Yeah.
the movie.
That's a good one.
It's like
Yeah.
2 hours long. So, tell them like, hey, you like ancient civilizations? Like, this is some cool stuff. And the way it's set up is great because it builds and builds and builds. And it just kind of lays
Very well
out.
done.
Yes, it's very well done. It lays out all the enough snake facts to where at the end you're just like, okay,
Yeah.
any normal person is like, all right, yeah, they didn't build that with copper chisels and ropes and
Yeah. It can
Butt
plant
flaps.
the seed.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
it's a great one.
The seed won't grow in everybody's mind, but it will plant it. And in some people it will blossom, and others it won't. But yes.
So
Revelation of the Pyramids is great.
Yeah, I hear this from a lot of the listeners writing in, that they have nobody to talk to about this stuff, and I know what you mean because I've been there too. But it's like our whole friend group, everybody that we know, pretty much, they're fully aware. Whether they make fun of us and stuff like, oh yeah, it's real ancient, right? Like yeah, it's freaking
Yeah.
ancient.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's cool. Look at this rock. This rock is ancient. So we get made fun of, but for the
Sure.
most part, people, a lot of them have come around, and then they're all sending us pictures of like wherever they go, and they're like, "Oh, look, we went to this place, and it's 1,000 years old," and we're like, "Right,
Yeah. It's pretty old, I guess,
pretty
bro.
cool, I guess."
That actually happened to me yesterday with one of the boss's sons, right? They went on a fishing trip,
Yes.
and he's like, bro, check it out. We went to, and he's showing me pictures of the ruins that they went and looked at. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool, bro. It's all right.
But they're doing
You know.
that's the point
Yeah.
is that they know, right? They all know that
Yeah.
we're like really into this stuff. So they're all sending us pictures of ancient
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And it's great. I mean, yeah, we got to go see all those things too. But
He was actually telling me the story because he was, this was our boss's son, and he was there. They were looking at a stele, like a Mayan. They went to a Mayan site, and they were looking at a tall, carved stone that was supposed to have a whole picture on it. And he showed me a picture of it, and it's really worn away. It's like,
yeah,
right, heavily weathered. And he was like, dude, we're standing there, and the guide's telling us what it says and what it depicts or whatever. And then eventually Dad just goes, I can't see shit. There's nothing on this thing. What are you talking about?
Classic Dan.
That's right.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah. But they went, they took pictures, and they took,
Yeah.
they took time out to show it to me because they knew I would be interested.
Yeah,
It was
and
cool.
it is really cool because it. You can tell that it has that classic. It's like the tall step pyramid style, and then at the top it has that giant like temple type thing built up. But of course, it's torn down.
Yeah.
And there's there's only a wall. It looked to me like there was just still a wall of that temple at the top standing up, and it has all the slots in it.
Yeah, it had the slots,
like
yeah.
windows, like these tall, like arrow, what do they call them?
Arrow slits. Yeah.
Arrow slit windows. And I was like,
Murder
dude,
holes.
this looks astronomical. This looks like an observatory, right? The windows are all vertically so you can see stars through them or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a really cool site.
Yeah. Yep.
But
He said that he was disappointed that the guide told him they didn't do the sacrifices up there.
oh,
He's
really?
like, "You mean they don't roll heads down these stairs, bro?" The guide said, "No, they do it down in the courtyard." And he was like, "Oh, man."
Listen, bro, tell your sports buddies to be like, listen, hey, like, do they sacrifice the winner?
Yeah.
Do they sacrifice the winner to the gods? That's all I want to know. They're like, what?
Yeah.
Let me show you a real freaking sport. All
Yeah.
right?
That's right. If they don't sacrifice the winning team to the gods,
Yeah.
it's not a real sport. Yeah, that's what I say
Yeah.
for sure.
Let's play pyramid ball. Who's with me? Anyway, yeah, it always hits me when people say that, and I'm just like, damn,
Yeah.
I know what that feels like, and it sucks,
Yep.
but just keep going. Keep pounding away at it. Keep dropping those
Yeah.
snake facts, dude, and they'll eventually come around.
Yeah. Or you'll find somebody
Yeah.
that you can talk to with it. But yeah, the Discord is a good resource. Even so, like, there's plenty of people in the Discord that say the same thing. Like, I don't have anybody else to talk to about this stuff, so they come there for that.
Yeah.
All right, you got the next one.
Yeah, so the next one is from Andrew. He says, "Yo, guys, I just wanted to share some thoughts on the myth and narrative episode. I'll try to keep it brief. Fail. I don't want to waste your time with stuff you already know." Well, that's not going to happen. All right. Generally speaking, I think that the discussion needs to be broken into two parts and handled separately. Myth on the one hand and narrative on the other. They are obviously related, but I think that keeping them separate can yield some fruit too. Okay, I like where this is going.
Yeah, so this is in response to the narrative show we did
Yeah.
not too long ago. Yeah.
So he says, for myths, adopting a both/and mentality rather than an either/or can be useful. Okay, so he says they are stories, but they also convey scientific, historical, and moral knowledge and information. The work of someone like David Matheson, for instance, shows how star lore is encoded in many myths of the world. But that is hardly the only knowledge they hold. I'm sure that you already know this with your work with Randall, though. What I find very fascinating and compelling is how much of the same kinds of knowledge seems to be transmitted, although in culturally specific ways. We don't get the same exact myths in different places, but they are similar enough to catch our eye. I suspect that this has to do with the fractal nature of reality itself. That's an interesting hypothesis.
Yeah, so the both and, right? He's saying it's both of those things, right? It conveys scientific information, but also moral knowledge, right? I think that's what he's talking about. Is
Yeah,
that what he's
rather than
saying?
an either or,
Yeah.
both and.
Yeah.
There are stories that convey scientific knowledge, historical, and moral knowledge.
Yeah.
I agree. And I think it's like from attempting to write stuff in that style, it's a purposeful and very difficult thing to do. Of course, I'm not writing like a narrative in the traditional sense of a storyline, typically with lyrics. It's kind of like little bits and pieces. But to try to tell a story, but also include, and convey scientific, historical, and moral knowledge and information, and make the story meaningful as well, just in and of itself, is bound to be very difficult. So I'm always fascinated with that. The fact that it's just interesting that he says the fact that they're similar enough all over the world could have to do with the fractal nature of reality is really interesting to me. I'll have to really think about that. Okay, next part. He says, as for narrative goes, that seems to be quote, baked into how the universe functions. The observer effect of quantum physics suggests that without an observer, existence doesn't exist. Basically, reality needs someone to tell its story. The fractal nature also plays into narrative, giving metaphor and analogy their power. Since a fractal is reflected in all parts and at all scales, all things will contain parts of the whole. Narrative, metaphor, and analogy are somehow at the very root of whatever reality is. If you've never looked into him, I would check out Joseph P. Farrell, among others. The conversation below is related to all of this, I think. And then he sends a link, YouTube link, and he says, I've got to say, the way you guys are willing to approach complex subjects is refreshing. Keep up the good work. Thank you for your courage, Andrew.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, all right, I have to...
ITM, buddy.
ITM. I have to take issue with this second part in the quantum physics aspect. So you're talking about the observer effect. And I feel like, well, look, I've looked into this quantum physics situation quite a bit. And in my opinion, the observer effect is a way of talking about an anomalous set of results that actually illustrate, the results themselves illustrate how different the quantum realm is from classical physics. But it's the way the physicists chose the language to describe it to the layman, to us, to the mainstream, that caused this observer effect idea that it was, with like that it was the observer that caused the change, that caused the splitting of, or that caused the collapse of the wave function, that caused this reality to come into existence, the collapse of the waveform. So the way I would break it down is that what's happening is not necessarily observation, but interaction. Yep. It's like saying, let's say someone throws a fastball and there's nothing in front of it. It keeps going, right? Well, then if you put something in front of it, well, the fastball stops. It bounces off of whatever it is, or someone catches it. And you could say, wow, the ball stopped in midair and changed its whole, converted all of its inertial energy into a glove or something like that. And so the fact that the glove is there actually caused the universe to be some way or whatever. Well, it didn't have to be a glove, a person with a glove.
Yeah.
It can be a wall. It could be water. It could be any other aspect of the natural universe that causes the interaction that changes the ball from just flying through space to suddenly converting all of its inertial energy into heat or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't require an observer to collapse a wave function. In other words, like if in the double slit experiment, they're firing this photon or an electron or whatever, and they're trying to detect it. The detector, they're calling the observation, right? The detector. So when it hits the detector, it changes its state. But the detector is not passive. It's active.
Yeah.
It doesn't passively detect. It has to interact with the particle in order to detect it. That's where the problem is. So once it does the interaction, now the state of the particle has changed. And so we can't possibly know what its previous state was. So there's the observer effect.
Yeah.
And you could say, well, when we're looking at it, when we're observing it, it becomes something else. And so when we observe the universe becomes something else. Well, in part, that's true. But it doesn't require an observer to change the state of any particle. It could be that the particle ran into something other than the detector, like two slits in an inanimate piece of metal. can change the state, or just a wall of lead or something. It doesn't matter. It can be anything, in any type of interaction can change the state, can collapse the waveform, and so therefore it doesn't require there to be.
If it's going towards a star, and
Yes.
it runs into any of the output from the star, which would be a ton of photons vibrating at high energy states, it's going to change it, collapse the wave function.
Yeah. Now, if it turns out that what's the term for the sort of model of the universe that everything is sentient to a certain degree?
Like panpsychism?
Panpsychism, right? Now, if that turns out to be true,
Like
then
everything has a bit of consciousness in it.
everything has a little bit of consciousness, and maybe consciousness is fundamental to the interactions that are the fundamental aspect of the universe. We just don't know that. Like, if you put a rock out there and then a fundamental particle interacts with fundamental particles in the rock, we wouldn't today, science today wouldn't say that was an observer.
Yeah.
So that's all I'm saying. Be careful with that. Like, I don't. So I'm taking issue with your second aspect there as far as narrative goes.
Yeah, I agree that the breakdown of the observer effect there was good. I still think he's got something good here with what he's saying.
He's the part is that he's saying the observer effect of quantum physics suggests that without an observer, existence doesn't exist.
Right. Is that some form of solipsism? Like
Existence isn't.
Solipsist. It's like, if I'm not here to look at you, you're not there.
Yeah. I don't think you can make that conclusion based on the observer effect of quantum physics.
All right, so what we'll say is the first half of your email was great. The second half was totally wrong.
Yeah.
Thank you for your courage, buddy.
We're throwing the second half of your email in the trash.
Thanks so much, Andrew.
I'm just kidding, buddy.
It's break time again. We're not going to get through all these emails, but this is great. These emails are fantastic.
Damn.
But yeah, it is
I
break
went
time.
too far on that one.
No.
Sorry,
It was
Andrew.
good. It's totally necessary.
I'll save it for the Discord.
Use him as an example.
Let that be an example to you emailers.
All right, we'll be right back, folks. Thank you guys so much. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Brothers of the Serpent podcast, we are questioning the standard model and their stacks of assumptions every week on this podcast. Once a week, sometimes more, sometimes less. More emails from you guys. Keep sending the emails. By the way, if you want to email in and maybe get it read on the show, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. I do read them all. We can't read them all on the show, but I do read every email that is sent. And I really appreciate all the communications from you guys. A large part of this show for us is being able to communicate with, each other as brothers, but also with all of you out there as listeners. So when you email in and we can read your emails on the show and respond, it's so awesome. So we really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And I normally don't read two emails from the same person on the same listener communications episode, but I'm making an exception here. I'm allowed to do that. This is another one from Troy Hoover. So this is called an answer for Snake Stash 3.5 years later.
Oh, dang.
Brothers, I have an answer for Snake Stash from the Bots Classic Pyramids Are Hard, episode 84, which aired about 3.5 years ago. This is one of my favorite episodes. About an hour and 10 minutes in, the three of you are pondering many of the engineering feats within structures on the Giza Plateau, and then on the flatness and level of the plateau itself. At 1 hour and 13 minutes, Snake Stash asks, how did they shear that plateau flat? And then he continues with, What's that belt sander look like? A hilarious moment. I was cracking up along with you guys when I first heard the episode. So please inform the stash that it wasn't a belt sander. It was a different tool that was left on the plateau after the work was finished, and it is still there to this day. It was a plane, which we now know as the Sphinx. Their profiles match. See the attached animated GIF I created for reference. Since it was used on a plateau instead of a workbench, it could be called a plateau plane. Considering its size, some god or otherworldly being would be the one using it, so it is probably an Anunnaki plateau plane, to be exact. That's a mouthful, I just think the Anunnaki plane is best. The next step for archaeologists is to use an intense scanning technology on the Sphinx to see if they can find property of Enki engraved anywhere, since we all know you engrave your tools to make sure other subcontractors don't take them. Hopefully, this email provided you at least a small amount of humor to pay back the large amounts of humor I've enjoyed during your podcast. Snakes from Troy. And yeah, so he's basically showing that the Sphinx could be used as a planing tool.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, he's talking about the old school plane that has, it's like a handle with a long flat bottom that has a little blade that you can adjust the depth and it just
and you use
along.
it to flatten out lumber. Yeah. Exactly.
Genius, gents.
The Anunnaki plateau plane.
But that's interesting to think that some of the artifacts might be the tools themselves, like some giant granite block that they later turned into an obelisk was actually something they used to just grind down the limestone flat.
Yeah.
Because they could easily move it back and forth and just grind it down.
Right.
That'd be crazy. Pretty cool.
It is cool.
We'll tell the stash, buddy.
Yeah, we'll tell him. I think he'll love that. He decided that giant flint sword that we saw in the Cairo Museum over there was a pizza cutter. So
that's right.
All right, you got the next one from Alex?
From Alex. He says, "G'day, Snake Bros. Alex here from Upside Down World. I've recently done a solo drive from Tasmania to Western Australia, which is 4,300 units of measure we don't use. And what does he say? Oh, binging. Binging is an understatement as to how I'm treating your podcast. Much appreciated. Finished Book of the Gosh Darn It and almost knocked off Hidden History.
All right.
I've had this snaky theory bouncing around in my head about Plato's description of Atlantean sea walls, the first coated with brass, the second with tin, and the third with orichalcum. And he says that's paraphrased. He says, I'm not so much interested in the composition of orichalcum as most researchers focus on, but as to the functionality of the three metals. I can only speculate on two reasons for the coating of sea walls. One, simply decorative, with a sect/class meaning undertone, or orichalcum, a possible copper alloy, seems to be the most elusive, therefore rare, and that is used for the center, therefore more important ring. I'm not sure on the abundance of brass and tin in the Azores region, but they seem less important than orichalcum. 2. When I think different types of metals sitting in seawater solution insulated by earth, I think a battery. This seems too obvious, and therefore I'm sure it's been debunked, but I cannot, for the life of me, find anyone online discussing this. I would love for someone to try a scaled-down version. I've made earth batteries before in ice cube trays and was able to light some LEDs. That's pretty cool. I like this. Yeah. So then he goes on to say, if there was examples of ancient battery-type formations discovered under mounds and also the standard model accepted Baghdad battery, I'm sure at least at another point in history, 12,000 years ago perhaps, the Atlanteans mastered this tech and maybe on a much larger scale. It's a really good point. If you think about a ringed city, concentric circles going out and then like water between them, and
salt water,
these three metals, salt water, this is a gigantic geo-battery.
It does, yeah. What a cool idea.
That's brilliant, dude. Okay, he says, let me know if I'm barking up a tree. Nope. That has been long cut down by the skirps. Nope. Or debunkers. No. Or maybe this theory has a leg to stand on. Maybe so. I would love to hear someone's opinion on it. Well, you got mine. All of your work. Love all of your work. We need more people like you guys taking these topics seriously and not getting carried away with crystal spaceships. But maybe as far as giant Earth batteries. ... Cheers, guys. Alex. It's great.
Yeah, listen, crystal spaceships is too far.
Totally ridiculous. Too
But
far.
a giant Earth battery powering the entire city. I mean, yeah, we can work
within
with
the
that.
realm of possibility.
It's actually really cool. The only thing I would say is, having somebody build a scaled down version. Well, you don't know the composition of orichalcum, so I mean that might be extremely important.
Well,
Yeah,
you
you can't just use copper and just say, well, it's mostly copper, probably. So, I mean, like a lot of times not a lot of times, but in many alloys, especially ones that are very useful, it's the tiny amounts of other stuff that you put in there that make it great, make it what it is, give it its properties, Yeah.
It's really cool. I mean, but still, even just thinking about it in terms of like a capacitor, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you're separating like these conductors with a mild insulator. I don't know, but I think it's
salt water is very conductive, right?
well, I mean,
it's not as conductive as metal.
yeah,
but
exactly. It's
Yeah.
in a way you like compared to other conductors,
Relatively
you could
speaking, yeah,
consider it a sort of mild insulator, which is kind of what battery cells like. A lot of times batteries are separated by this sort of it's like a slow conductor between the two very different chemicals or something like that, so that they can have a slow reaction between them or something like that, or the potential is, I don't remember. I'm not sure how it works, but you don't want it fully insulated. In other words.
Yeah. That's true.
Anyways, I'm not a battery expert. I just remember reading some stuff about it. Like there's like a slow conductor, basically.
Right. Yeah, we should talk to GMA about it.
Yeah, I think it's a cool idea.
Yeah.
We should build one.
Let's
build Atlantis.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. Screw the prototype. Let's just build the whole thing, the full size.
I love the idea, though. It's great.
We still got it. People have been asking about the cold fusion. We still got to do that. Need to get those parts,
Oh, yeah.
the metals.
Yeah, let's irradiate ourselves.
Yeah. Hey, it's cold. It's only like 5,000 degrees instead of whatever, 50. Okay. Next email from Joe called No More Room Under the Rug. Gentlemen, snakes and lady snakes, hope all is well with you. Quoting the big R, which I assume is Randall, can't hide much more, no more room under the rug. As the information you all share shuffles through my mind, I must admit that I have other sources I also include to round teachings. Well, maybe not Marty. Still waiting for Marty to get to the point. Sorry, Marty. I'm just being a smartass. At the younger Dryas boundary, something beyond comprehension happened. Comet, meteor, megaflare, micronova, CME, all or more than one of the above, that nudged a crustal shift, magnetic pole shift, glacial melt that created all the chaos we are trying to unravel. With Atlantis in mind, if it had been located along the mid-Atlantic ridge, as Randall mentioned, it would have been a thrust elevating Atlantis above sea level. And if the crust shifted Atlantis south toward the equator, the ridge above sea level would quickly and easily become a rift as the plate expanded to accommodate the new circumference, and Atlantis would have plunged to the bottom. Add to that the massive ice melt. To all the sculptards, the carbon footprint was not an issue then. We could not stop what happened. It will happen again, and we won't be stopping it then either. Please understand, science has convinced us that there had to be dark matter and dark energy in the universe. Used millions, if not billions, trying to find it, and now the James Webb Telescope seems to have provided alternative evidence that not only is there no need for dark matter, but there may never have been a Big Bang. How many super colliders have been built trying to simulate an event that never happened? Science! I prefer snakes! Keep on keeping on. Love what you do. From Joe.
That's cool. Yeah, they're walking that back. You know, the
Yeah, they
James
are.
Webb stuff. They're like, hey, well, hold up. Wait a minute. That's not what we're
Hold
saying.
up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
That's right. They are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw all the news stories like, oh, dark matter on this, and then they're like, yeah, they're circling the wagons right now.
Yeah. Those first articles came out that there was no Big Bang, and the entire scientific community was like,
Hell no. To the no, no, no. Yeah, to the no.
Yeah.
okay.
Next.
You got the next one
Yeah, so we got one from
at the bottom.
DJ.
Yeah.
So it's titled Gobekli Tepe or Gobekli Tepe. It says, hello, snakes. Last time I wrote about a stupid movie. Hey, that's me. And you were gracious enough to read it, so I figured I'd write about something a little more topical. My theory on Gobekli Tepe burial. Here we go, dude. Hurry up. Let me do a couple of snake squats. Get ready to debunk this theory. He says, I believe that not only are people the same across Earth now, but across time as well. No matter where you go, people have the same issues. They have squabbles with neighbors, the state kind or Wilson kind, squabbles with bosses, squabble with family, and the one that applies here, squabbles with people building things. How often do you read of a company, church, government, etc., who wants to build something and people oppose it? Happens all the time in all countries. Now take something like Gobekli Tepe, which had all kinds of religious, death, astronomical, and astrological meaning. I don't believe that you could possibly build something like that without opposition.
This is a really interesting idea.
During the whole building process and afterward, there would be protests and people gathering support for tearing it down, warning of terrible things to come because of this undertaking. Then there is an earthquake or impact or huge war, and all the protesters convince the public that they were right and that the only way to secure their future and appease the gods is to bury it and leave no visible evidence that it ever existed. Anyway, I know that was a long email. Not compared to some of the others, Bellboy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I edited it down as much as I felt I could and still get my point across. You guys rock. DJ. Snakes!
This is a cool idea. It
Wow,
is an interesting.
dude.
When I first read this, I just started thinking about it, like how often do these structures get opposed while they're being built? Just in general, it is an.
I mean,
interesting
think about the collider, right? The Large Hadron Collider. There was a bunch of people freaking. You're gonna make black holes.
Yeah. I mean, they kind of want to, but yes, people were freaking out about
No, it's
that.
a good point, dude. That's really interesting. Yeah, so they build the whole thing, and there's people that are like, they're doing black magic over there, and then something bad actually happens, and they're like, we must bury the whole thing, destroy it, bury it.
Another example I can think of is the Temple of Hathor at Dendera. Like the story that's told there, the reason why it wasn't buried, but it was like abandoned, and all of the faces of Hathor and all the columns and on the walls were
Chiseled off.
defaced, was because supposedly this isn't known for sure, but the idea was that some calamitous event happened to Egypt, and people took it out on the Temple of Hathor because she is the goddess of destruction. She's the goddess of like rebirth and destruction at the same time. She's the one that wielded the eye, right? So,
Man, I think it's pretty solid. Guess I can't destroy it, old boy. It's a really good thing to consider, actually.
I just think it would be easier to topple it than bury it with it standing up. That just seems really hard.
You can't disturb it because of the black magic.
Oh,
We must bury it piece by piece to appease the gods.
okay. I mean, that you're totally right. That could
If
have
you
been.
destroy it, the dark gods will come down upon us and wreak havoc. They must not know. It can't see. It can't be let to be seen by the gods from above.
Okay. That's true.
You never know, man. I mean, he's got a point here. He really does.
He does. And I mean, you don't even have to have anybody opposing it at the time of building. They could just decide later that it's the reason for whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I'll point this out that the idea that they buried it because it was, this sacred site, or that it was like a school and blah, 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 has a lot less merit to me than this. Because, like, what is the motivation to bury? Like, if you have a school, there's no motivation to bury the previous projects, because then you can't observe them and learn. If you're teaching, you want to show all of the examples of construction. So, in my opinion, the school hypothesis of the burying of the sites has no merit at all. It has no weight to it.
The school explanation for what it was has no explanatory power for the burying.
For the burying.
That's what you're saying.
But the burying, because it's sacred, now, okay, all right. But this one is just as valid.
Yeah, I agree.
This theory is just as valid. So I don't, like, the way I look at the site, I question the burying, because it's such a massive undertaking that you have to have at least as much of a workforce as was required for the building.
Yeah.
For the burying. So it's just so strange. But yeah, it's just as good, in my opinion, as the one that's like, oh, they were trying to preserve it or something.
I love the idea of protesters, though. They're out there like, hey, ho, ho, giant stone circles have got to go.
Dude, there's a whole bunch of them that like take off their butt flaps and just lay in the middle of like the place where they're bringing the giant stones. They're just like sitting there. They're trying to move a giant stone. There's a bunch of butt flapless people sitting.
Right. They lay in the path between the quarry and and the site, and won't let the guys drag the blocks over them.
That's right. Hey, giant circles have got to go. Giant stone circles have got to go. This is genius. Love it. Next email.
All right. Yeah, next. This is from Ian. Says, salutation. It's called Snakes and Poles. Salutations, Snake Bros. I am a social studies teacher from Denver, currently teaching U.S. history and economics, but I taught ancient American civilizations for several years. I started my crazy ancient history research after watching the Pyramid Quest series with Anthony West, Bavall, and others in 2013. Totally blew my mind, and I've been digging deeper ever since. I am loving the book review of Path of the Pole.
Awesome.
I've actually been pondering. Yeah, thank you. I've actually been pondering how precession, pole shift, and dates of ancient sites might all connect and add up. It seems to me like there is fairly decent evidence that is adding up, which corroborates Hapgood's initial observations. And then he gives a link. He says, see here, yet my mind is astir with questions that I wanted to share so that you might be able to ponder them with me. 1. How well do Hapgood's former poles align with forces of precession? I think he means precession here. Would the wandering poles replace or work with forces of precession? 2.
That's a good point.
Yeah. What if Hapgood is correct about pole shifts, but was incorrect about the pole that was shifting? Could the shift in our magnetic pole potentially produce the same climatic effects as the crust shifting? 3. Could tidal forces, precessional cycles, and the weight of ice caps and water together account for forces large enough to produce the polar shifts that Hapgood arrived at? 4. If polar wandering does occur, then doesn't that throw a huge wrench into archaeoastronomy and the dating of sites based on precession? How might we more accurately date ancient sites of extreme antiquity? And 5, if polar wandering occurs rapidly, then is that how Santa delivers all the presents on time. Thank you, too, for all you do. It makes my week when the new podcast drops, and it's so nice to have a vibrant community that is so excited to dive into such compelling topics. Love, music, beer, and snacks from Ian.
Ah, yes.
Sorry, I ruined your joke there, man. I completely stumbled over your joke on number 5. Just destroyed it.
So I would just say, he poses the question, do tidal forces and blah, 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 whatever. All that stuff. Yes, I would say if Hapgood's idea of the whole crustal shift is correct, then all of the forces play a role. Like everything, tidal forces, the changes in our orbit, in our eccentricity of our orbit around the sun, precession, all of these things play a role. They each have some type of, they're either an effect or a cause of various things, right?
Yes.
So if it does take place, then every force that is being applied to the Earth must be a part of it.
Right. And I do, question number 4 about polar wandering, and doesn't that throw a wrench into archaeoastronomy and the dating of sites? So that depends on when Hapgood thinks the most recent shift took place.
Yeah.
And if any of the sites that we've been looking at are older than that.
But there, again, you could take Mario build reps.
Yes.
Like his observations, the data set that he's put together on the
he thinks many
sites.
ancient sites point to older poles. Yeah.
Yeah, so that could be part of it. So you could say and one of my big problems with the crustal shift hypothesis was that, well, we're not going to say that the Sphinx is
30,000 years old.
Yeah, 30,000 years old if crustal shift has happened.
Right.
Because it's pointing due east, and then that would make it a, just a coincidence that it was pointed due east.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you'd have to sort all this out. Like, we just don't have dates.
But that also means that Robert Schoch's tentative dating of the Sphinx at maybe 9 to 10,000 years old could be accurate, because that is after Hapgood's most recent shift from the Hudson Bay to the current pole.
Yeah.
But I think these are great questions.
Yeah, they are.
Even the Santa one. That's a good question. But I also love this one. Question number 2. What if Hapgood is correct about pole shifts, but was incorrect about the pole that was shifting? Could the shift in our magnetic pole potentially produce the same climatic effects as the crust shifting? Okay, so the point that we're at now in the path of the pole, where we've read about the ancient rock bands showing basically whole climatic regimes based on the axial tilt that are totally unaligned with our current pole, I don't think the magnetic pole would cause that. It seems to have to be a physical shift of the crust.
Yeah. I've never been on board with the idea that the magnetic pole shift is going to be some catastrophic event.
Right.
Like I have trouble figuring out how that's going to happen. Now, it depends on your definition of catastrophic. I don't think it's going to be like
it isn't going to be
younger
like
Dryas level.
No.
Like extinction event level. I can imagine it causing a lot of problems, and maybe there could be periods of bombardment of, from cosmic rays and stuff like that, radiation that can kill.
Yeah, just solar radiation. If we spend 10 years without a strong magnetic field where hard solar radiation can make it down to the surface, then there's going to be problems. But it isn't going to be like a geological catastrophic event where you have volcanoes and tidal waves, but it could cause extinctions. But it might also cause just massive, evolution.
Yeah.
Like hard radiation coming, like basically the same kind of radiation that you would face in space, except that you have I guess you would have an atmosphere blanket protection, but still.
Yeah. But it's also based on the idea that there would be some type of collapse
Yeah.
of the magnetic field, and I just maybe that's not necessary.
Right. It's possible that it happens really fast and there's no collapse. Yeah.
We use alternating current all the time, and that's just flipping magnetic polarity.
Right.
And there's no collapse of the energy there. It's a reversal of the poles of the magnet. So I don't know. We don't know.
And I think that's a function of the mechanism, right?
True.
So it depends on what is the mechanism, the dynamo that causes our magnetic field. If it's some kind of liquid effect, and that liquid takes a little while to
organize itself
into the reverse form, then you're going to have a collapse of the magnetic field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good questions all.
Yes. Okay.
We don't know.
Yes.
All right. The next one is from Batman. He says, "What's popping, snakes? I have a question for you, and I'll make this quick and easy for you guys, as I know you are far too prone to being sucked into reading books for emails."
Hey, that's totally untrue.
How dare you? How dare you say that about us? Let me preface the question by saying I know absolutely nothing about what the answer may be, just a hunch. But I am lazy and I don't want to do any research. My question is, if the components of the atmosphere changed in any way, would car engines still work the way they are built? Yes, they would. But it depends on the change.
Right.
He says,
depends on the change and the component.
if the components of the atmosphere changed in any way. So yeah, if certain abundances changed for nitrogen or for
Oxygen,
or yes, that they would still work. But if they changed a whole lot, then there could be a situation where they wouldn't work very well.
right? Like if there was no oxygen, they wouldn't work.
They would not work. If the intake of the engine could not suck in enough oxygen, then nothing would burn.
Right.
There would be no ignition.
Yeah.
So if you put a nitrogen tank and you connect it to your intake on your engine, and you just blow nitrogen in there, you're screwed, bro.
But if it's nitrous oxide, then you have
you're going to jackhammer that engine.
Yeah. And you have nitro, bro, and you're good to go.
He says, "Keep on slithering, brothers. $50 Dynasty rocks. Godspeed."
All right.
And his name is Kyle. But
Excellent!
Thank you.
yeah, his logo there on his email is the Batman.
Yeah, that is
symbol.
clearly the bat symbol.
It's totally Batman.
Yeah.
Batman just wrote it. Batman's secret name is Kyle. That's cool.
All right, one more segment to go. We're done with this one. Time for a break. I need a beer.
Are we? Oh, you don't have any. What? Check the fridge. Are there no beers?
I got a fridge here to check. All right, we'll be right back, folks. I got to check the fridge.
Snacks. Glad to get lost and die in a pyramid somewhere around the globe. That is us, folks. Brothers of the Serpent Podcast. And we're back. We're doing a communications episode here. And as you know, the listeners provide great show content. We love to read the emails on the show. And actually, I am reading emails for the first time on the show today. And I have to say, I'm doing an excellent job.
You are doing a fantastic job.
No one's going to want to hear Russ read an email ever again. I told him this could be a game changer.
I think it is a game changer.
He's been wanting to drink beers. I'm at the coast. I'm drinking beers, and I didn't leave him any beers in the studio
There's
fridge.
no beers
I'm
in the
such
fridge here.
a horrible bro. I am really sorry about that.
No studio beers.
I
Not
actually-
even one. The fridge is like off.
I feel really bad. I do. It's a huge mistake. But I also accept it for reality, and I am enjoying my beer. Classic.
Yeah, I thought about it when I was headed down. I was like, should I bring
You
beers?
should have brought beers.
Because
Yeah.
Kyle isn't gonna go and bring beers, so I needed to bring my own beers.
Normally, my job is I leave the studio between segments and I get a beers.
That's right. That's right.
I know,
He shows
but-
back up with beers, and it's just not happening this time. I guess he's not able to both bring me beers and read emails at the same time. That's clearly what's happening here.
I'll work on it. I'll get better.
Yeah.
All right, so
So-
James next, huh?
Yeah, James. So James, I'm going to break rules again here. James, I've marked two of his, and they were sent back to back. And I'm actually going to read the second one first because it's kind of an introduction.
Okay.
So James says, "Hi again, Serpents. I apologize that I didn't say how much I loved your show since I started listening a few months ago.
How dare you?
I've recently started to go back to listen to the book reports as I initially skipped them. How dare you? But
How dare
great
you
stuff,
again.
guys. Off topic, perhaps, but I am a farmer too, a dairy farmer. I've been
How
dipping-
dare you?
Hey, finger guns. I've been dipping into regenerative farming. As with the standard model of geology being upturned by a few young upstarts, agriculture is being turned on its head too. I've
Yes.
completely cut off my artificial nitrogen use. I'm now in organic conversion, which takes 2 years, so I've got another 18 months left. I have to live without herbicides. But apart from that, my soil is healthier than it ever was, and the biodiversity that has come back to the farm has been pleasing. This brings me to the climate discussions. Obviously, cows are causing all the man-made climate disturbance, as you know, having belching parties. I know this is a load of hokum, as I'm sure you know too. I actually consider myself a nature-friendly farmer who doesn't believe in CO2 causing climate change. There, I said it. Yes,
How
I
dare
do
you.
believe that we have affected the planet, where we have removed vegetation and there is no soil cover to hold onto moisture and carbon in the soil, which acts as a sponge. Of course, high temperature spikes in the UK and Europe this summer went to the media's heads, and it is worse than ever before. It's easy to see if you check with a thermometer on a hot day. Pavement is the highest temp. Bare soil is lower, but soil with vegetation on it is cooler again. This is with all the same solar radiation hitting it. People just can't understand these kinds of basic truths and how we can manipulate these things with our management. And then he attaches a video here of regenerative farming techniques that they do in Cooley Duty Farm. He says, best wishes, no snakes in Ireland. St. Patrick banished them. Regards from James. Well, I think the snakes are making a comeback in Ireland,
Yes, sir.
James. There's at least a few in the Discord.
There's a fine couple of snakes in Discord.
Okay, so the first one he sent, which I'm reading second, is called The Path of the Pole. Hi, Serpents. I have a question on an issue you brought up in The Path of the Pole. It has to do with the temperature of the Earth during ice ages, which you explained paradoxically has to be warm to produce the snow needed to grow the glaciers. Perhaps somewhere you've explained this before, but it's something I have pondered. But during the last ice age, the sea level was 400 feet lower. Funnily enough, I remember a discussion on a different podcast previously about Mars, where the ideal settlement area is in a place similar to the Mariana Trench because of higher temperatures and thicker atmosphere. I'm from an area in Ireland, which was on the cusp of the ice during and at the end of the last ice age. This area is County Waterford on the southeast coast. The local town is Dungarvan, where there was actually mammoth bones found about 100 years ago, less than a mile away from where I grew up in limestone caves on the estuary of the Colligan River. Wow. You've probably never heard of this, and you are totally right. They were found here and in Cave, around 5 miles from there, also in a limestone cave, but nowhere else has mammoth bones been found in Ireland. As you have often discussed before, there was an area in which humans probably lived, in which is below current sea levels, right beside where I live in the Irish Sea, which is connected to what was Doggerland in the North Sea. My question relates to the fact that as you go above sea level, the temperature drops on the mountains or hills by international standards surrounding County Waterford to go around 2,000 feet. Agriculture takes place up to around 600 feet in our environment, but for the most part, the productive land is below 300. Above 800 feet, most trees barely grow, and there is a tree line. I took a trip to the Scilly Islands, which is off the most southerly end of the UK, Scilly, sorry, not Sicily. Scilly Islands, which is off the most southerly end of the UK, a few years back on a sailboat, and the sea was around 60 meters or 200 feet deep almost exactly for the whole trip, apart from one very short period where it was around 100 meters or 300 feet, probably an ancient river channel. My question is, do you think the temperature at this height, 200 feet below current sea level, would have been a few degrees Celsius higher than would be expected at current sea level? My point being, could that temperature have been as good as we live in today, thereby as good a climate as currently? Regards, from James. So if I get what you're saying, I think you're saying that if you drop sea level, then you get deeper, you get lower places to live in, and so it could be warm down there. Like that's the
thicker atmosphere, higher temperatures because of higher pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's true.
Like, look. You think about it in terms of physics, right? Like you have a thin atmosphere, the molecules are further apart. They may be affected by solar radiation, which is jiggling them around, sending them flying this way and that, but they have a lower probability of running into another molecule. When you go down deeper into the atmosphere, you get higher pressure, meaning that the molecules are much closer together. And so if they are warmed in any way, or any molecules that are warmed from solar radiation coming from above, those molecules are moving around. The ones that move down have a higher probability of running into something than the ones that move up. Right? So the deeper you get, the closer the molecules get, the higher potential there is to run into something else, another molecule. And so you get higher temperatures. They're all jiggling around. You get much more collisions the deeper you go into the atmosphere. So yeah, you're going to have the higher the pressure of the atmosphere, the higher the temperature, typically.
Yeah. Physics lesson number 2 from Kyle on this episode. I need a soundbite.
But it's
Kyle
it's a
W.
complicated
Allen's physics lesson of the week.
I love this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's obviously a lot of factors that play a role here.
Well, here's my question. If you drop the entire ocean, is there going to be higher pressure down there? I mean, or is the whole atmosphere just fall into those holes and just, I don't know.
That's what I mean. You drop the entire ocean. Well, think about, let's say you start.
That's 70% of the surface, so the atmosphere itself is going to shrink, the envelope.
Yeah, but the volume, the area of the volume that it takes up is also shrinking. So the whole atmosphere moves down, and now the volume that it can be contained in is much smaller.
Okay, that's true.
And so it is much more dense.
Right. So maybe before the sea level rose 400 feet, there were places where at sea level, we had much more than what we now call one atmosphere.
Yeah, one atmosphere was a higher pressure than it is now.
Yeah.
And the solar radiation, if you consider that the whole atmosphere itself, like let's say the furthest reaches of the atmosphere also went down, which is kind of strange to think about because all we're doing is we're taking the liquid water, which seeks its own level due to gravity, and we're putting it in a solid situation where it doesn't seek its own level as well. It's much more viscous.
And we're putting it on some of the highest points on the planet in terms of altitude above sea level. It starts in the mountains.
Right.
in the most, I guess polar
Yeah, it
caps
has
don't
a
have to.
slump. It has a slump, so it builds up and then it slumps down. So it's not like we're reducing. And actually, the other thing you have to consider is that when water freezes, it expands. So you actually have more volume of solids
That's true.
than you do in a water situation. The gases are trapped in there, but that may be a factor. So I don't know how you could figure it. But anyway, the dissolved gases in the water will then expand when it's frozen.
Yeah.
So the water expands. So you have
You have less water taking up more space, is what you're saying.
Yeah. You have less water, but you have more solids, and the solids are taking up more space than the water did.
Yeah.
The other thing you have to consider, this is interesting about making wine, right? We have these vessels. I'm going to switch to wine. We've got these vessels, right? 59 gallons, you got a barrel. It's made of wood. The wood expands and contracts, obviously, but the wine in it expands and contracts more than the wood does with temperature change.
Yeah.
When you increase the temperature by a few degrees, if you have a barrel full all the way to the top and the bung is like
overfill.
touching the wine, like you push the bung in the hole and it's touching the wine, like the wine's all the way full, and then you raise the temperature 2 degrees, the wine comes out of the barrel.
That's right.
It expands. So think about the ocean and 2 degrees of temperature. The ocean itself is going to expand.
Swell.
A 2 degree drop, the ocean itself is going to contract in size like a lot.
Yeah.
So
And the atmosphere as well. The whole atmosphere.
the whole
envelope.
atmosphere as well is going to expand and contract with temperature changes.
Yeah.
So these are probably going to be massive changes.
Yep. There was a science fiction story. I think it was a Neil Stevenson called Seven Eves, and he talks about this when the Earth is getting bombarded by a massive amount of, asteroids. Basically, the moon broke apart, and it's getting bombarded, and the people that were in space trying to escape it were bringing in a piece of a comet, and they wanted to swing it around Earth so that they could bring it into orbit where their space station was. And they had done all these calculations, and then they get the comet into the close path to Earth, and then they find out that they made a huge mistake because the atmosphere is massive because all of these impacts were heating it up.
Yeah.
And they almost lose the comet because it's hitting the atmosphere is way bigger than they thought that it would be in their calculations. They didn't take that into account, is what I'm saying. Because the atmosphere had risen to like 5,000 degrees or something. It was just,
Yeah. The other thing that's interesting about what he's pointing out is the energy paradox, right? Like you've got to have enough heat
right.
to raise the water from a liquid state into a gas state and move it to the poles where it can then cool down. The cooling, like we learned from Feynman, right? We went through the character of physical law. The cooling of that water to turn it into ice, the water vapor, to turn it into snow, we don't just lose that energy. That energy doesn't just go away. It's transferred. So that's another thing to consider. It's really odd to think when the Earth is going into a an ice age period where you can have enough heat energy to convert the liquid water into gas. Then it has to move to a place to where it can then transfer that heat energy somewhere else so that the water itself can condense and then freeze.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about it in those terms, right? Where does that energy go?
It must go into the atmosphere, right? I mean, the heat raises the water way up into the atmosphere, high enough to where it can cool down and condense. But it also has to move it massive distances where it can rain down as solids instead of liquid.
Yeah, so think about that. The movement into an ice age period requires enough heat to lift the water from its liquid state into a gas. Then you have to have wind and all these other forces to move it into the polar regions where it can then dissipate its energy and then fall and land and be converted to ice to the glaciers.
And it has to be perma ice, right? Not something that will melt.
Yeah,
so
the Watcher's pointing out is convection. Go ahead, Watcher. I know you're fighting right now. You don't have to type. Come on in. Tell us what's going on.
He did tell us to call. He did tell us to call on him on this segment. He wanted to say something.
Yeah, it's convection. So yeah, there's a lot of energy being exchanged, right? Being traded places in the cooling process, in the moving into an ice age, and then obviously moving out of an ice age into a warm period is the same deal. You're just transferring the energy from one place to another. Now, the period we're in right now, the ocean contains a vast amount of this energy.
So what is this bit about the mammoth bones that he was talking about? Is he asking... He's saying, like, so this area supposedly was right at the edge of the ice during the end of the last ice age, but nevertheless, they found mammoths. So he's wondering if they are in a refugium, maybe.
That doesn't mean that the mammoths were...
contemporary with the ice age.
Yeah, I mean, they could be, 40, 50,000 years old? We don't know.
Yeah.
How do you know how old they are?
Well, he sent some links. Maybe there's information in there. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe they are. Anyway, it's such a rabbit hole, dude.
Yeah.
And I've been listening to some standard modelists on the climate change stuff and trying to figure out like what the basis is for carbon dioxide being a major factor in the warming and stuff. I don't quite understand the arguments. So I'm still digging into it. And my cousin is, he has a degree in physics. And so I was like reaching out to him like, hey, can you explain this to me? Some of these aspects. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm very interested in it.
All right. Next. You're up.
Yeah, I got one from Ash. Is this our Ash?
I don't think this is the same. This is not the Discord Ash.
He's got an Ouroboros. He's sort of an Ouroboros thing.
Yeah. All
right. This is not our Ash, but this is an Ash. And he says...
I don't think it is. Don't quote me on that.
I'm not quoting Russ, who says he doesn't think that this is our Ash. Anyway, Ash says they're called large, low shear velocity provinces, LLSVPs or LLVPs, and or superplumes.
Yeah, so the title is Those Thingies Under the Crust.
Okay, I was going to say, is this the beginning of the email? No. The beginning of the email is the subject. Those thingies under the crust.
Right. This is a response to we were talking about the big blobs.
Yeah, the giant blobs. The LLSVPs or LLVPs and or superplumes. And yeah, they're weird, he says. I do wonder though if they are truly more dense than their surrounding environment. Would they not act as antennae for seismic waves and other geophysically induced energies? Maybe that is why they are located beneath hotspots of mantle convection. Anyway, I'm thoroughly enjoying the current series. God dang it. I hope that Ben from SO...
Suspicious Observers.
Oh, Suspicious Observers gives y'all an interview. It could be wonderful to tie up the book report. And it doesn't matter how y'all structure your podcast. I'm a lifelong listener. As long as you talk about pyramids occasionally, he says.
He says one of the stick to the pyramids crowd.
Yeah. He's kind of giving us a little nudge, wink, wink there.
Yeah, back to pyramids.
And so Ash says, people also consume your media in different ways. I started watching on YouTube, then found your site. Then I got an iPhone and started using the podcast app, which is terrible. and you should delete it, but you can't because it's iPhone. And yet sometimes I watch on YouTube when the chance presents itself. So I don't know. The numbers may be deceiving or not. Who knows? Love y'all. Get back to work. Ash. P.S. If Hapgood is even remotely correct, or Velikovsky et al., then this current book report that y'all are engaged with could be of the utmost importance to humanity. I don't know how to say it, but that's kind of special. Meaning what y'all are doing could end up being instrumental to the survival of the human species, and for that you both should be commended and respected. Here are my kudos.
Yeah, thank you, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.
Saving the world, one podcast at a time.
That's right. But you never know. You could be destroying it.
That is actually the goal. I mean, we might end up saving it by accident.
Look, the Ouroboros is saving and destroying the world at the same time.
That's right. That's right.
You eat it to grow yourself, but you shrink the thing you're eating.
Yeah, I need more tail, so I should eat my tail to grow more tail.
That's it. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. And I agree. What are they? The large, low shear velocity provinces. These are weird things.
Yeah.
I wonder what Hapgood would have thought of them, or if he would have included them in his ideas at all.
Yeah, I don't know. They are very strange. I've been thinking about them in terms of this, when Hapgood's talking about the standard model of the interior of the Earth. I mean, those things have come up in my brain as well. I totally agree. Like they're odd. They are, if they're more dense than the surrounding material, then they, according to the standard model, would have a greater gravitational effects.
Right. Yep.
So there would be gravitational anomalies near them, and that could be part of the torque that's happening with the tidal forces, with the moon, and et cetera, et cetera. Like, they might play a role. We don't know, but they could be a major factor.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Next, from Mama D. Says, so, this is called Dag Nabbit to both Kyle and Russ. So sorry to have to say this, but I must whine about the new format. I understand your intentions, however, it's like jumping into some utterly immersive brain explosive expansion without getting a chance to say, hello, how are you doing first? That's like the only way to do that. I have more analogies to offer, but I refrain because I don't know who may read or hear this. Well, I'm reading it and everyone's going to hear it. Over the last couple of years, I feel like I'm getting to know some very talented and intelligent people who care more about content than the number of thumbs added to an algorithm. I may not always be enthused on a topic, but I also learn a lot about things I've often pondered and things that haven't drifted across the surface of the brain pond. Second, wine. I can't make up my mind which songs I love best from which release, so maybe that's more of a rousing, very well played, literally. Okay, wine session over. Same blah blah if the course of discovery, but sheer delight at the number of thinking people out there that have found a voice and places to air thoughts, ideas, concepts, and have a great time doing so. Though I haven't met up with you all yet, I just wanted to tell you both that I get so many levels of enjoyment, it's beyond words. Speaking of which, this is probably plenty of words or Kyle will lose attention and Russ will call this a book.
Wait.
Just...
What are you talking about? You said my name. I heard that.
Just don't stop looking for the questions. Always have, always will, from Mama D.
Mama D!
Yeah. Whining. Well, listen, we make wine. But we don't want any whiners.
How dare you suggest we change the format for thumbs ups? I am offended.
Is that what she's suggesting? Is this like a covert suggestion that we're just
she
doing
makes
this
a
for
good
the
point.
algos?
She's like, dude, don't worry about how many subscribers you have. Just keep doing what you're doing because I enjoy it.
Yeah. This is not about subscribers. It is about making it easier on new listeners, though.
Yeah, I have to say that going back
I
to
don't even know how many subscribers we have, actually.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
The first email, I think, talking about how like, oh, I have nobody to talk to about this stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Like, let's
That was
say
from Troy.
that it's kind of like that, right? With the podcast. But we would get more listeners if we change the format. Right? You get to the meat of the discussion first, and people have a short attention span. So then you get them involved. Then they join the Discord. Then you have more people to talk to about this. It's like
That's right.
if you don't get to the meat of the subject and they don't have an attention span and they bail on the podcast and then they never join the community and we don't have all their thoughts and ideas in their emails. So yeah, I think growing the community is a big part of what we're doing here. Like it's not the whole part. The content obviously is the major part, the main part, but the community has become such an amazing aspect of it that, yeah, we're trying to piss off half the community by changing the format.
Hey, I've been thinking about this, and I would just tell those people, like, we're actually going back to the roots. We're going back
true.
to the origins, man. Like
Yeah,
the
that's
beginning.
true.
In the beginning, we didn't do any of this intro stuff. We didn't have space for the news. We didn't have
Yeah,
ag
that's right.
updates and rock and roll. We were just like straight to pyramids.
No, what started all that was the community saying, well, talk more about what you guys do.
Yeah.
Tell us more about your lives and stuff. So we're like,
Yeah.
really? You want to know about our lives?
Yeah. What about pyramids? Like, who cares what we are doing?
So yeah, it's I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate it that it doesn't matter to you. I appreciate that, but it does matter to me that we thought, like, this was the logic, that it wouldn't turn away people that were new if we didn't do the sort of our lives update and whatever space weather news and random stuff in the beginning, but that it would actually turn away less people if we got to the main topic right off the bat.
Yeah.
And that
That's
was
how
the goal.
Soraya does it. I mean, Soraya, like, he just says, welcome, where did the road go? Here's my guest. And then he asks the question and then they go off,
Yeah.
It's like, I don't think this is a problem.
But it's interesting too how, like, when we do a show with Soraya, we spend like 45 minutes shooting the breeze before he hits record.
Right. Yes.
So it is a natural aspect of sort of, conversation to just kind of shoot the breeze for a bit and then, start getting into a deep conversation. So I do understand. It's I don't know. It's a weird balance.
Yeah. Well, I'm the kind of person where if I'm like hanging around and there's a bunch of different groups of people talking about stuff and I'm standing there and I'm overhearing different groups of people talking about different stuff and they're talking about their lives, I just wait until they bring up pyramids and that's when I step in and start talking.
exactly.
Like, I don't want to talk to them about their lives.
That's right. The old format change.
It's like we make wine. This is what's happening. We change the format, making wine.
That's right.
But I think everybody will get used to it. It's fine. We're still doing, we're following, like I said, what we did in the early days, but we're adding the request of like, who are you guys and tell us about your lives at the end of the show. So it's still there.
I don't know, man. Maybe we should switch back. I'm starting to get cold feet.
No.
Okay. The next email is from, what is this? Antoine?
Yeah, I think Antoine.
Antoine? I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
So this one is image heavy, but it's really cool.
All right, here we go. I'll do my best, folks.
Yeah.
And it'll be better than Russ. It says the marks seen on the unfinished obelisk as well as throughout the Aswan quarry are not scoop marks. The ancient Egyptians were not softening the bedrock and scooping it out. Instead, they were softening the bedrock and grinding it out. They were carving three-dimensional objects or shapes in the bedrock before removing it from the slot. Their techniques for working stone would be more familiar to us when working wood. So, terms such as planer, grinder, drilling, sawing, carver, lathe, milling, etc. Therefore, they grind away the material using something that was spinning. They did not scoop it like ice cream or in one motion moved it across the rock surface like a cheese grater to remove material. That is why the obelisk that is still attached to the bedrock has the same marks on it under the belly as its top sections, even though the under section has a very limited and cramped space.
Yeah, so he's showing images here of woodworking techniques, and then right after the woodworking, he's showing images of the unfinished obelisk and the similarities in tool marks.
Okay, let me rephrase that last sentence.
Yeah.
Sorry. He's basically saying that this is why the obelisk that is still attached to the bedrock has the same marks on its underbelly as its top section has, even though the undersection has very limited and cramped space.
Right.
So those square, if you guys have watched the video that Russ that we did on the podcast, the unfinished, it has all these sort of squarish, sort of rounded cornered squares of indentations on top of the obelisk and then down the sides and then even on the undersides of the work. And then the email follows with a set of pictures, and they're saying that the spinning, if you had a round ball, think of a trailer hitch, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's like this ball, but it's got a narrow neck connecting it. Now imagine that ball is a grinder, and it's spinning, and you push it into so in the picture there, they're pushing the ball into a slab of wood. If you pushed it into just a clean surface of a wood, it would make sort of a round impression. But if you did it in a grid pattern, that round impression would turn into squarish impressions with sort of rounded corners, which is what we see pretty close, what we see on the obelisk in Egypt. And they show...
Yeah, this is a sculpting tool for wood. He's showing multiple pictures of people using this tool to make sculptures out of wood. Very interesting. And he's comparing them with pictures of the Moai and of the objects in the quarry at Aswan in Egypt. And the tool marks look very similar. Obviously, the tool marks in the quarry are enormous, and these ones for this sculpting tool are, finger sized or whatever.
Really good point that these could definitely be a spinning ball.
Yeah.
It could definitely be a spinning ball making all these marks that we see in Aswan.
Yeah.
I am totally down with this idea. And Antoine says, thanks. Let me know what you think. We just did.
Yes.
Appreciate that. That's a really good illustration. Can we put these photos in the show notes? Is that possible?
I can try. I can definitely get them on the website.
Yeah, you should put them on the website.
I can put them on the website. The Libsyn isn't too great with putting pictures in the show notes, but I can probably put them on the website.
I will, dude. I'm gonna have to go.
I'd like to add a few of these to the presentation.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah,
this is really great. Along with, look, Jeffrey Appling also had a pretty good way of representing this type of patterning in his sonic drilling.
Yes.
Because the sonic drill doesn't need to be a round tip at any way. It can be a square. It could just be, you could have a piece of square stock steel attached to that cone that's vibrating, and it's just you're running the slurry past it, and it's just grinding right through. It's the same action that Antoine's talking about here. It's a grinding action. However, you're using a vibrating tool not spinning, a vibrating tool,
Yeah.
and a slurry. So the
Right.
slurry itself is the grinder, and the tool tip is the vibration.
Right.
So I think both of these are pretty good ideas.
Yeah, the only thing I'd argue with, not even argue, but just caution with Antoine's idea here is the idea that they were softening the bedrock and grinding it down. I'm not sure.
Oh,
what he
I
means
thought
by
he was. I thought Antoine was saying there's no need for the softening.
He says they were not softening the bedrock and scooping it out. They were softening the bedrock and grinding it down.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, I don't think they were doing the softening.
No, I don't either. Not at least not with the granite. I just can't buy the softening granite thing.
Well, I don't think it's necessary. It's not that I don't buy that
Yeah.
it's possible. I don't think it's necessary to explain what we
Right.
see.
Sure. Okay. One more, and then I think we're done for the week here. One more. Let's see. I'll just do a short one here from Clyde. It says, first time emailer. I just wanted to write and thank y'all for all the hard work you put into this show for all of us. I personally love the Johnson jokes, being a Johnson myself and somewhat of a Johnson too. I could write a book, but I'll leave it at that. $50 Dynasty rocks, and I'm Draconis in the chats. Rock on, my brothers in scales from Clyde. It is okay to dox me.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Rock and roll to you. Oh,
Yeah,
boy.
rock and roll.
God dang
All
it,
right.
Chance.
And
Man,
another,
that went by so fast, dude.
another fantastic batch of emails. You guys are all so awesome. Love the emails. Next week, more Path of the Pole, right? When are you getting back?
Friday.
Oh, okay. So we could record on Sunday then. Maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we're down. Dude, I am so down.
Okay. Well, I'll have to start working on show material then. Cool. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I thought maybe you were getting back sometime in the weekend. So Friday. That's good. Okay.
Heck yeah,
Again, thank all of you for writing emails. You can email us, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. I read them all. Well, you can't read them all on the show, but I pick the best ones and the ones that I want to respond to out, and then I read them on the show. And now Kyle and I are reading them on the show. So this is good.
Loved it.
And we can continue this. Another format change here. Let's see if anybody whines about it. I don't want to hear Kyle reading emails on the show.
It's
Stop
just more
changing
proof,
stuff.
folks. I can read. It is something that I can do now.
Yeah. Website, brothersoftheserpent.com. You can find all the podcast related stuff there, including the way to support us. If you like the show and it gives you value, then we operate on the value for value system. So you can give us value back in the form of Patreon support. And if you do that, you get Patreon episodes. We don't do tons of them, but we do some. And then, of course, we put the bumper music up there, too. We're slowly but surely adding all the bumper music that you hear on the show, which is all made in-house by Kyle, to the Patreon feed. So you can get access to that. There's short videos of stuff. We do put stuff on the Patreon. Or if you want, you can support us through PayPal. And we appreciate everybody who has done that. Any support for the show really, really helps. So thank you so much.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Oh, and didn't we have
No,
somebody
I
for this week?
looked. We don't have any producers or executive producers.
Oh, but we
today.
do. We have Ryan donated to us at the Scablands.
Oh, okay. This is a backlog producer.
Yeah.
That's right.
Ryan.
Where did I see?
Ryan Lowry.
That's right.
Ryan Lowry, thank you so much for the donation you gave to us
Thank you, buddy.
at the Scablands. That makes you the executive producer for episode 261. Hope I got that right.
It's 262, buddy.
Ah! Episode 262. So yes, support the show if you can. We really appreciate it. Join the Discord. That's also on the website. Everything else related to the podcast is there.
Join
Thank
the
you guys so
tours.
much. What's that?
Come with us. Join the tours. Come with us. Go explore
yeah.
the world. It's awesome if you can do it. It's quite amazing.
Yes, that's right. And it is tour season for us right now, so we will be out of town a lot. until the end of the year. But there will be content coming from Egypt. That ought to be great.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Thank you guys so much. We love you.
Always have.
Always will.
Good night, Adamu.
Get back to work.